So you get a nice kind of build up of this effect. Don't worry about that ding. Sometimes it does that when it's getting a little bit stressed out and you're pushing it a bit too hard. But there you go, just a nice bit of build up. Now what I'm going to do is bring my camera in a little bit so that I can see that a little bit clearer. Oops. And then I'm going to add some more details. Now the nice thing about working in 3D is that the brush that you're working with, the effective size changes dependent on how far your camera is from the object. So in other words, now I'm drawing smaller blobs because my brush is smaller compared to the ship, because I brought the ship closer. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more very quickly. Bit of a rough job, and there we go. So with that done, what I can do now is I can grab the smudge tool and set up the size of it. Now you can play around with different kinds of textures, different types of brushes as you see fit. The basic brush does the same, does a good job as well. So I'm just going to use that for now. But if you use something with kind of quite a stark black and white contrast, then you do get different patterns kind of being pulled along by the smudge tool. Anyway, I need to make sure that my strength's set up properly and my brush size, and it might take me a couple of goes to do that. But all I need to do now is pull that which I've just drawn over the front of the hull onto the rest of the saucer. Now I'm doing it small. Bear in mind these ships are really big. So if you're doing something like a shuttle, it may well be that you want to do something a little bit bigger than this. But for a big ship like this, I always feel like you want to keep the lines down as much as possible. And then you would do the same as this on the underside of the saucer and on other areas as well. One of the areas, for instance, is almost always the bridge module on various different species. And again, you're just doing the same type of thing, drawing over the top, and then smudging around the sides where there would be kind of lots of friction and things would be drawn off. Okay, so I've now gone over the entire model, and I mean there's going to be a couple of places that I've missed, but basically I've covered all of the main areas that I want to, and I've kind of put dirt streaking at the front and anywhere that's supposed to be catching any dirt, basically. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into each texture, and I'm going to make a new layer on each one, and I'm just going to call it something like Omni. Now, Omni is non-directional dirt that's just very faint but built up over most of the hull. And actually saying that it's non-directional is a little bit of a lie, because it's going to be mainly focused on areas which are front-facing, but it's just a little bit less obvious where exactly that dirt's come from. So, okay, if I now grab a brush, and this time I'm going to change it to something with a pretty clear pattern, something like rock mud 2, 3, 4, any of those kind of things, spotted one. If I just kind of drop those on, then you can see roughly what they look like, and play around with it, see what you think looks best. I think that's probably going to be okay, something like that. Right, so what I'm going to focus on, you notice I'm using a very large brush. I'm not focusing on any particular details, but I am looking at the overall shape of the model, and from the front what would catch the dirt, and that tends to be the front of the saucer and the nacelles, and it's just supposed to be very light and just to give the hint that the area is getting dirty, but not clearly where that dirt's coming from or anything else like that. Okay, so that is very quick, very easy way of doing your general dirt, not worrying about it too much. The final thing is to put in details which are based on the textures. So I'm just going to make another new layer, call it details, save that, and again. Right, and what we're going to do with this is find ourselves a nice hard brush. There we go, running sewage, which sounds lovely, I know, but that creates quite a nice hard line. In fact, if I just show you on a large scale, you see it does that. Now, I don't use that for all of my streaks and everything else because it looks a little bit repetitive after a while, but on a smaller scale it works very well and helps me to just create the desired effect. So I'll show you on the bridge for a start because that's 3D. It's actually on the model, but it does show how you can use this for the smaller, finer details. And I'm not being really picky about how I'm doing this. I could spend forever worrying about whether or not I'm getting this lined up, but it's not going to matter too much. And I'm not worrying too much about whether or not the streaks are going over other parts of the object, because if they do, that's fine. It's not going to be perfect, whatever you do. So let's just look at some other details. For instance, these hatches here, on the normal maps, those are bumped out. So what we want to do with that is have a very fine brush, increase the opacity, because obviously the smaller the brush, it's harder it's going to be, and just put on a few little lines where the bump would catch the dirt. And again, you see I'm not being particularly clean about it. I'm not stressing out about whether or not it's going to be okay, whether it's going in the right place, but just draw it on, basically. Something like that. And you can also still smudge this, remember, so at the very end feel free to wisp it out a little bit and also draw that back a bit. Okay, so I've spent a little while doing that, and I'm now more or less happy with it. In real life I'd probably spend a little bit longer on this, and I probably will go back and do things a bit more, but overall this is enough to demonstrate the point. Now what I've done is I've created a few extra textures, or a couple of extra textures, saucer_fx and wings_fx. Basically you just need an FX map, and then I've created those and blanked them off, and you can see red, green, blue is completely black, and then alpha is white because that's transparency. So all we need to do is open up these textures that we've just created. First of all, probably be a good idea to save it as well. And then we open up the textures, and all we need to do is draw a white rectangle, plonk that in the background, and then that's our weathering map. We can select all of that, merge all of those layers together, copy it, and then paste it into the blue channel. Just the blue. Okay, and that will now get loaded by the NanoFX Viewer whenever you increase the weathering control. So if I just load up NanoFX, it may record quite slow. In fact, I'm not actually sure it'll record all. But if I load up the object and double click on Norway, there's my ship. And all I have to do is increase the weathering, and you can see it just applies it over the top as a multiply mask. And that's it. Job done.